Happy Noodles and next Noodles. Yes. You're gonna do it. We're on the right. We're on the right path. Yeah, you are. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yeah, are we'd like to offer you this.
Oh, look at this. Thank you.
Yeah. Just. This is 14 years since we started publishing.
Oh my goodness, look at this. Oh yes, yes.
This is in 2010.
Yeah.
Last July we started using plastic cover. And we were on our first
look at that.
with that
Yes, yes.
And then this is, I believe,
April 18th. That was when I became editor, yeah.
All the article was about Trudeau. Yeah, and I hope that you know if Justin can do it.
And have I proven you to be right or wrong in that article? Reading it back.
This is Salam Toronto was the first non-English, non-French weekly paper becoming member of OCN, Ontario Community Newspaper Association. Then I was selected as a board member. This is in 2000,
2006.
2006, yeah.
Yep.
We are don't protect Iran.
Yeah,
And then it was a concert here by Bruce Springs.
Yeah.
Let's play Iranian. This is the night when Mr. Moridi.
Reza, when he got elected, yes.
For the second time.
For the second time. Wonderful.
Yeah, every year we have an event at Rome.
It is a heritage, Iranian heritage day.
This is Mr. Jean Curtin. Yeah, in April 10, 2003.
War in Iraq, yep.
Yeah. This is when there was a real campaign between two gentlemen.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm not sure.
Look at that. Oh my goodness. Yeah. 2007. That was, yeah.
It was an exclusive interview with Salam Toronto.
Nice.
Exclusive interview pure truth.
Well, wonderful memories. Well, thank you for the ongoing support. I'm glad to be able to update both your photographs and the conversations. On est occupé hier soir. C'était ma première soirée loin de mon nouvel enfant. I have a 3-week-old baby at home. Of course. Adrian, yes. Adrian. And last night was my first night away from him, which was very difficult. But at the same time, it was my first good night's sleep in 3 weeks. So it was nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So did you name him after the very well-known
Roman Emperor?
The Roman Emperor who was very culturally...
Well, my wife had an uncle, a great uncle, who actually died in World War I. His name was Adrien, and it was a name that we liked as a strong family name. But I wanted it with an H to be stronger as a name, and of course Hadrian was seen as one of the 5 good emperors, and I was named after one of the other emperors, Justinian, that my father was a fan of. So it's a classical name. I believe in respecting history.
Well, Hadrian was known for bringing the whole Roman, he was bringing communities together.
Indeed, and I had a bit of an issue with the Scots, but I am 3/4 Scottish, so there's a bit of an issue there. nothing too troubling.
You have coffee here?
No, just a glass of water would be fine.
Okay. Monica,
Yeah, perfect. I think they're working on it.
please, glass of water. Okay, Mr. Turdle, let me introduce my colleagues, Mr. Taj Dolati Mohammed, Mr. Mashoud Nasiri.
You remember me?
I remember meeting you, yes.
Mr. Turdle, if not every day, every other day, there is either a story or a topic directly talking about you in our office, between us and with our community. Yeah. And we are really happy to have you here. David is a very good friend of us and very educated, very active, and we appreciate his professional approach to Canadian democracy. Ehsan is my son, Queen's University graduate, and helping me as well, very active with Liberal Party, provincial and federal.
Wonderful.
I was supposed to actually join your Toronto campaign. I was recruited by Michael Levitt, but I got a job by Minister Hoskins.
There you go. Well, there may be some news that may keep you busier in the coming while on the federal side of things.
Not pretty sure.
Keep your ear out. No, specifically involving Minister Hoskins. So
Okay.
Let me start asking some questions. This is Nowruz. Happy Nowruz. I know that you are familiar with Iranian culture and history and our community. We want to have your take of Iranian community here in Southern Ontario.
Well, the Iranian, the Persian community in Canada is very, very strong and well established. It's larger than just its numbers. It has a lot to be very, very proud of in its accomplishments and its involvement. Nowruz, for me, being one of those celebrations that pulls together people of all different religions in Iran, is something that I like to highlight as the things that bind us together as human beings and as Canadians are always stronger than those that differentiate us. And I think Canada is one of those countries that is strong not in spite of its differences, but because of them, and being able to find common ground and celebrate things together is really important to me, and certainly the Persian community has been at the center of that, not just in the West.
Mr. Trudeau, in 1997, after I was admitted, landed immigration statute to Canada as a journalist, I wanted to educate myself about Canada. And the very first thing I remember I did, I had a small copy of Encyclopedia Britannica, and I went to Canada. There were about 6-7 pages about Canada. And you may be surprised, there was only one person's photo, and that was your father.
I'm incredibly proud of my father and the values he stood for, the service he offered to the country, but also the vision of a world that was defined by respect and openness and fairness for everyone. And what he was able to build here in Canada is something I think we can all be proud of. But we also have to know that we are now more than a generation later, and we have a lot of work to do to continue that vision and to make it work in the 21st century. And I'm very optimistic about the work we can do together.
And I'd like to share with you that my dad, the older generation, passed away 4 years ago. He knew Mr. Pierre Elliott Trudeau very well, and not only him, his generation as well. So there are lots of respects for Mr. Trudeau in Iran, even among the older generation.
It was because Mr. Trudeau noticed in '73, I think, he has the trip in Iran in the epoch of Shah. That was very, I was young, very young. I was in the high school, and I remember that, It was a big event in Iran when Mr. Trudeau came here to Tehran.
But of course, it wasn't his first trip to Iran. He had traveled very much through the Middle East, through the Far East, in his youth, and his perspective on bringing the world to Canada and a respect and affection for some of the very strong and deep civilizations that he knew well around the world. Iran certainly being one of them was very important.
Yeah, the impact was similar to the trip of the General de Gaulle to Iran. It was exactly the same thing. It was because as a Prime Minister of Canada, when he comes to Shah, goes to the Mehrabad airport, through that. As it was very good. I remember that.
The picture over there, on the frame, Mr. Tarawi put the same day, Toronto start with
2000. 3 weeks before our first edition. About Iran, you never been to Iran?
Not yet. No. Not yet. I've been to about 90 different countries. But, well, there will have to be significant changes in the government of Iran. I think one of the things that is important that not everyone understands is the distance between the current government of Iran and the Persian people and the citizens of Iran, who, by and large, are better educated and more global in their outlook than the current government tends to portray. And I think there are very, very real concerns about the current government in Iran that need to be addressed, but one has to make sure that you think about the citizens of Iran and the Iranian government differently, and that's a nuance that I worry sometimes this government doesn't actually appreciate or understand. A good example was the closing of the embassy last year. That I know certain elements of it were a security decision, and I'm not going to second guess the safety of Canadians and the information they might have had, but I'm of the school of international relations that says it's important to talk to each other, and it's especially important to talk to regimes that you disagree with and that disagree with you, to make sure that there is means of communication. When we think about whether it's the Canadians who are on death row in Iran at that particular time, or other issues, or just serving Canadians who happen to be in Iran, or Iranians who have Canadian families, it was important I think to understand that this is not a decision to be taken lightly.
Yeah. Did you follow up the Green movement in 2009 in Iran? Closely.
I didn't follow it tremendously closely. I was just newly arrived in the House of Commons and very busy trying to figure out Canada. I mean, one of the big difficulties for me has been all my life. I've been an international traveler. I've spent years traveling around the world, seeing all sorts of different countries, and over the past 6 or 7 years, I have done almost no international travel at all, because I've been very, very much focused on getting Canada right, and very much engaging with the communities from around the world here in Canada.
Okay. If you permitted me, I want to ask you, when you talk about the international affairs, I have a question. Sometimes I think about it, and fortunately today I want to ask you directly. Traditionally, image of the Canada during the decades in the world was a country has the humanitarian actions and peacemaking, peacekeeping. And unfortunately, during the past few years, we look at the foreign policy of Canada has changed radically. And if you look at in the UN, or in the Middle East, or in the Persian Gulf region, countries, and actually today in Ukraine, there's no anybody from the the leaders of the international community look at carefully to the movement in Ukraine. But Minister of Affairs, Foreign Affairs of Canada goes to the stand, and show up, and today Mr. Harper goes to the
for a 3-hour photo op.
My question is, what is your opinion about the foreign policy, actual foreign policy of Canada, and what is your vision if you come Prime Minister of Canada to change this policy?
Well, first of all, to understand Canada's present foreign policy, one has to look at it with the lens of domestic electoral concerns. This is a government. Stephen Harper didn't do much traveling, if any, before he became Prime Minister, and the lens through which he looks at foreign policy is always, is this going to help my electoral prospects back home? That's one of the reasons why he is so very preoccupied with Ukraine, because obviously there's a very large and very concerned, rightly concerned, Iranian-Canadian community. But whether it's a positioning around Israel or positioning around working closely with the United States, he's very, very much focused on what is going to play well at the ballot box. That's not my vision for what Canada can be. And in my first international trip as leader, I went to Washington, D.C., and I made a real point, which I think surprised an awful lot of people, of not bringing up the many disagreements I have with the Canadian Prime Minister, with Mr. Harper, while I was on a foreign trip. I believe that Canada should be of one voice on the international stage, and people can respect that we're a democracy, and yes, there'll be disagreements of opinion, but anyone elected to represent part of Canada in the House of Commons should speak with fairly a consistent voice. So when Mr. Baird chose to go on a conservative-only trip instead of a government trip to Ukraine or other issues like that, I think that there is a weakening of Canada's traditional fairness and openness to the world. But for me, the pillars of Canada's international engagement need to be three things. First of all, classic diplomacy. The number of historically important roles that Canada has played on the diplomatic, whether it's the Suez Crisis, for which Lester Pearson won a Peace Prize, whether it's our engagement within the United Nations, or more recently landmines or responsibility to protect. Canada has always played a very, very strong role diplomatically in promoting peace and understanding and dialogue and openness and respect between peoples in the international community. And over the past years, we have a government that is forcing its diplomats to be partisan mouthpieces, and they get all their talking points approved from Ottawa, and it's a breakdown of the classic diplomacy. The second part that's important internationally is engaging in trade. This government has dragged its feet on important trade files, and only just now, whether it's the Canada-Europe trade agreement or Korea or others, is only now sort of rushing to get big trade deals signed. Because they weren't emphasizing trade properly, and you can see a tremendous level of conflictedness around trade that this government is playing up. And the third element is development, an idea of the responsibility that Canada has to be creating opportunity and security around the world, and that means that's done with, yes, in some cases we have to put boots on the ground in the Canadian military, but in a way that understands that there are places in this world where, of all the different Western countries, perhaps only Canadians can go because of Americans' imperialistic connections, because of European colonial powers. Canadians are have been seen as there to help, and over the past years we've lost that a little bit, and for me it's very important to get back to it.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Sorry, long answer, but it was a big question.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you, and it's a pleasure to have you here and have a chance to ask you directly the question. I have actually two questions, but I start with the internal policy, and there's a general question is about electoral cooperation. I ask you this question, I sort of know your answer, but I'm not kind of convinced. So I'm coming back again.
Of course.
Well, there are two issues regarding the deficiencies of the democratic electoral system that we have. First, I went through the Election Canada's website since last 2 centuries and this century. Well, that's 12, 14 years. I took an average since 1867 till 1997. The average turnout was 70%, precisely 69.7. I took last 5 elections since 2000 till 2011. It was 50, actually 61%. So 9 points down. This is the general, just the picture. You know this, and that's even worse with the younger generations.
Yes.
Disengagement. Okay, now my point. First, come take all approach. Maybe it's good. You get 35% of the vote, you get the majority in the government, right? It's not bad sometimes. That's a good part that is...
it offers stability.
Stability, exactly. But has it done work? Disengagement. That's my belief. It makes people feel disengaged. They don't participate, or they
why should someone who votes Liberal vote in Calgary, for example? Or why should someone who votes Conservative bother to come out and vote in Montreal? I mean, that's...
And guess what? Last election, Liberals had like 20% of the vote, and they got 34 seats, right? They deserve 70 seats. I made the calculation. You guys are not benefiting either. Green, poor Green. I calculated it was 11 seats. They deserved 11. They just made it 1. So here is my idea again. Vote split. Vote split is among the progressive. Actually, I believe in VP as progressive. It's some reservation as well. So anyway, I know 20% Liberal camp are believing on kind of merger, coalition, whatever. So that's, I'm not talking at the moment about merger or coalition. I roll it off. But I think kind of electoral cooperation among the parties is something to look at. Let's say, God forbid, you win with a minority. For a split second thing, minority government. Justin Trudeau wins. I hope you will get the majority. But if it's a minority, what do you think happened last decade after? It's an unstable situation, disengagement, all those sort of things that happened prior to Harper governments, right? So, again, I'm going back to the kind of, those areas that conservatives doesn't get 50% vote, kind of in the local level of the association, you run all the candidates across the board, 330 something? 38. But on those areas, on the association level, on local level, they will come up with the kind of who is the winner. So, if Joyce Murray was advocating for that. But anyway, I'm saying still it is a possibility because it has two advantages, community involvement. My community as well, I think, they see that their vote is counted, as well as electoral involvement. That's two key areas that it will improve in this regard. So what is your plan? Not getting a minority government.
Of course. Well, there's a few things to that. There's a lot of elements, so I wanted to make sure I took notes so I didn't miss any of them. First of all, on first past the post, you're absolutely right that if it doesn't matter if someone gets 31% of the vote, if the other parties only get 26 and 20%, and it's all divided up, then they get to represent 100% of the community, and that's why I entirely agree that it's time to move beyond first past the post. But how we do that is very important. I personally, and the Liberal Party, has adopted the format of a preferential ballot, where the person who would be elected gets more than 50% of the vote in the community. So they represent the majority of the community. And the way you do that is by having a ranked ballot. So that, someone would say, well, I really like the Liberal, I'll vote for them first, but I could accept that the NDP, the orange person, would be okay, and I'll give them my second choice, and maybe the Green Party the third choice, and well, the blue person, I'll rank them below the communists because I don't want to vote for them. And then, as people drop off the ballot, if someone voted Green first choice, but Green ends up with the lowest number of votes, they drop off, we look at the Green Party second choice. And that way, the person who gets elected was at least the first, second, or maybe third choice of more than half of the riding. And that will go a long way towards not just validating people's votes and saying that it matters, it'll also go a long way towards changing the approach in politics, where a political party will then have to reach out to supporters of a different party to say, I know you support them, but we have similar issues, and they'll be looking for trying to find common ground between the parties instead of just differentiating. So I think that a ranked ballot a preferential ballot is a strong way of changing our electoral system that I've been pushing, and I've committed to look at once we form government. Secondly, the idea of cooperation and figuring out. There's two angles on that. The first one, simply put, I don't believe in removing choices from Canadians at the ballot box. I don't think political parties or strategists should get together behind closed doors and figure out ways to say, you know what, we're going to have less choices for Canadians because Canadians can't be trusted with democracy, or Canadians can't make their own decisions or their right decisions. We're going to arrange it so there's either an NDP or a Liberal on the ballot, but not both. I like the idea of offering choices to Canadians and trusting them to make the right decisions. And that's one of the reasons for it. The other reason is, yes, you can call the NDP a progressive party if you like, but I'm not in the business of just getting rid of Stephen Harper. I'm in the business of offering Canadians a better government than Stephen Harper's offering. Canadians just don't want a different government, they want a better government. And on some really big issues, there are fundamental disagreements with the NDP that I truly believe forming a government with them would not be in the interest of Canadians, whether it's on trade, whether it's on natural resources, where they have irresponsible positions, or specifically, and it's now in the news with the Quebec election, on the issue of the Clarity Act. The NDP, in contradiction with the Supreme Court of Canada, think that it would be okay to break up Canada with a 50% plus one vote. That's not good enough. I don't believe that a Prime Minister should be in the business of making it easier for separatists to break up the country, and that's exactly what Mr. Mulcair is doing. So there are fundamental disagreements that I don't think we're forming a good government to work together. But in a minority situation, the Liberal Party has and always will commit to working with other political parties for legislation that serves Canadians to move in the right direction. So whether it's cooperating with on a specific bill with the Conservatives or with the NDP or with the Green Party on issues that matter to Canadians, I'm all good with that. I believe that the government needs to be more respectful and collaborative, and those are things that are very important to me.
Thank you, John.
That's question one. Mr. Trudeau, during the past 20 years, I'm here as a journalist, and I am a member of the National Review Press and the ombudsman of that, and I am in relation with the other community journalists too. My question is, and my concern is, any government that has no direct relation, direct contact with the communities. Usually the politicians they know some people, some rich people, they participate in the fundraising, they have the budget, and the image of each community, is not real exact image of the community. As it is true for our community too. Do you think it's necessary for the government of Canada to create, not administer, but an office, to have some people, to have the direct connection and to reflect the real voices of the communities to the government?
Well, I mean, the government, or Parliament, does have people whose job is to connect with the communities. They're called members of Parliament. They're called MPs. But the fact of the matter is, we have a government right now that is not allowing even their Conservative MPs to be strong voices for their communities in Ottawa. Instead, this government prefers its MPs to be voices for Ottawa in their communities. And that's a breakdown of our political system that is very, very worrisome to me. But it's also why I've put such a lot of work into reaching out to communities and listening and encouraging open nominations the way I have, so that people come forward and understand how important it is to connect with the people they represent on the ground.
Thank you so
much. Last question.
Of course.
Your message, this is Nowruz, beginning of a spring, for Canadians with Iranian descent, especially young people, please.
My message is just one of celebration. This is, when we talk about politics, it's easy to get cynical and to get negative, but we live in an extraordinary country. We live in an extraordinary time. And as we have a generation of young people growing up who are very proud to be Canadian, but also proud of the heritage they bring with them from all around the world, there is an importance right now in Canada in what it is and what it represents, the message that we share of a country that can be prosperous and fair and happy and successful because of all our differences, is one that has never been more important in the world today, as we see the rise of conflict, the inequality, the resource depletion, the extreme weather events. The message that we bear as Canadians with ties all around the world is that we need a world that resembles more Canada, and this is something to celebrate in our extraordinary diversity. And Nowruz, which is celebrated by Persians of all different backgrounds and cultures and religions, is really important as an example of coming together to celebrate the same things, because what binds us together is always stronger than what differentiates us.
In passage, in your greeting, Nowruz passage, your Persian accent is excellent. I propose you to take some course of the Persian language, to know another language. It's very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
I'm very good at listening.
Thank you very much for coming, and we hope to see you more and more in our community.
I would like
all
that.
This corridor
very,
from
very
Finch, Shepherd, all the way to our Iranian market.
I look forward to coming back and having good people like David to bring me around.
Sure,
is very helpful.
Thank you very much.